it's something that I really stick to every time I make a documentary. It's really to talk about their work and to have some kind of conversational, feeling in the documentary that I'm trying to have,
Well, how you doing today, Daphne?
Hi, great. And you? Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you, and I'm doing great, thank you. I'm really excited to talk about this documentary. In case my shirt and vinyl back there doesn't show, I'm a King fan, especially Mike Flanagan.
Yeah.
And the crossover of those two is so great, and I love that he's in this. But the documentary as a whole is just wonderful from start to finish. And so I'd love to hear about where your journey started with, exploring King's legacy on screen.
Well, actually, I've always loved Stephen King because I discovered him when I was 10. And it was through the book The Shining. And after that, I really wanted to read everything. I was a huge reader. I couldn't stop reading, even today. And so I read all of his books and watched the adaptations sometimes at the same time. And it's a couple of years ago, actually, it was in 2019 that I thought I was talking with my producer, Sebastian Cruz. And so we were talking and I said, well, I really want to make a documentary about Stephen King because I think there are so many great things to dig if we can talk to the directors who adapted him, for sure, like is the most adapted living author. So we were talking about that, and I said, okay, but we'll have to see if the directors are ready to do it, if they accept. So we sent like 10 emails, something like that. And the next day we had 10 yes. So we thought, wow, okay, that's amazing. And then we thought, okay, we should really go into this and dig and try to have a lot of directors. And we reached to everyone, and we had so many great opportunities then to meet them. And it was quite difficult because of COVID, so we had to wait a lot. But finally, we made the film, so it was an exciting adventure.
Well, I'm glad that it came together even after all of that, and that everybody was so keen to talk with you. And with that said, I'm curious if there was any one director that you were really excited to talk to of the ones that you reached out to.
Frank Darabont, it was the director I really wanted in the film because he's my favorite director, and he directed, Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile. The Green Mile is my favorite film, so it was like, okay, I really want to have Frank Darabont in this documentary. It would totally make sense to have him. And Mick Garris as well, because he made 7 adaptations. That's amazing, And Mike Flanagan, I mean, he's, for me, the new generation, in horror is amazing. And also I wanted, directors that are a little bit more discreet when you talk about Stephen King. For example, Taylor Hackford, who did Dolores Claiborne. I think it's a great movie. So I thought I really want to have Taylor Hackford as well in the documentary. So yeah, but all of them. I mean, when you have the chance to talk to directors and bond a little bit with them, it's great because it's, you are like having a masterclass every time you are making an interview. So it's a pretty amazing.
Now, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about that, because one of the things I love to hear from documentarians such as yourself is how you go about fostering a level of trust and communication with your subjects. And since you are such a big fan, I'm curious how you found that balance between essentially fanning out with these people while also still making sure that you're treating them as neutral interview subjects.
It's always different with each film. For example, the first documentary I made was in prison. So I went there and I really wanted to talk with the person who works there, because those person wake up every day thinking, okay, I'm going to jail, I'm going to work, it's normal, and it was very different, because those people are really not comfortable in front of the camera and comfortable talking and comfortable doing interviews, so it takes a little bit more time, for example, than when you are talking to directors who are always talking about their films, always on camera. But the thing I really told each of them is that I didn't want to make a documentary to trash the movies or something like that. I said, I really want to have your point of view. I don't want to make judgments, about your films, about your work. And it's something that I really stick to every time I make a documentary. It's really to talk about their work and to have some kind of conversational, feeling in the documentary that I'm trying to have, And so you really just have to, I'm trying to be myself and to explain them what I really want to do. And we build that trust.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to, because it got some great stories for the screen. But with that said, not wanting to trash any adaptations, King is someone who, with as many adaptations as there are almost as many bad as there are good, admittedly. And I'm curious how you narrowed down which ones you wanted to focus on versus which ones you didn't, because I find it interesting that you explored Thinner, for instance, one that not many people necessarily enjoy, but still found a way to look at it through a positive lens. So I'm curious how you went about narrowing down the list.
For sure, at the beginning, we had the directors. For example, if we had John Carpenter, for sure, we would have talked about Christine a little bit longer, So you are a little bit restrained in some way, because I'm not going to talk about it for 10 minutes if the the director is not there to talk about the film. So we talked a little bit about that with the directors, but it's conversational. So you are taking at the end what the director said, and it's really trying to make to have a string through the documentary, through the different topics, and one topic bringing another topic, so sometimes there were films that I really wanted to talk about, a lot of them, for example, Bag of Bones. And I talked about that with Mick Garris, for sure. We talk about each film he made, but I couldn't talk about all the movies he made in this documentary, because it would have been for hours long, So it's something that really we had to make choices when we were editing the film. Okay, we are talking about women, for example, so it made sense to talk about Dolores Claiborne and, for sure, Gerald's Game, because it's an amazing film, with a great female character. So then we really had to go and have a path, through the documentary. So some of the films we couldn't talk about, but yeah. Perhaps we could do a sequel then.
I'd love to see it. There's clearly just a wealth of material to cover a part two, even if you're just going back through Mick Garris footage that you didn't get to use.
Yeah.
That man could a whole documentary in himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because each interview was almost 2 hours long. It depends. The shorter ones were an hour. But so we thought that we should make a book, with the full length interviews. So that way people could have the book as a complement to the documentary, and have see all the questions we were able to ask, and all of the great answers by the directors. So yeah,
I would definitely pre-order that book if it ever comes to be. So I will keep my fingers crossed there. You mentioned Carpenter, you mentioned It, so Andy Muschietti. I'm curious if you did actually reach out to some of those directors and they just weren't able to make it because of scheduling or something.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the case with Andres Muschietti because he was completely underwater. He was working a lot. So we really tried and he was okay with doing it, but we couldn't figure out on a date. It almost happened with Mike Flanagan. So I'm so relieved we were able to have him in the documentary because we were both at the same time in Los Angeles, but he told me, okay, I'm here for a week. Like after that, I'm leaving. And before that, I was away. So it was really tough, but we made it. But for sure, I would have loved to have Rob Reiner for sure. And a lot of other directors like Marie Lambert, for example, but I never got an answer from her. So it was, sometimes you have to do with the directors. And I can't believe that we had so many directors in the documentaries. It was so great.
Yeah, it's incredible. Even the ones you met, again, that's sequel worthy right there. Getting everybody else because you had a great lineup for this one. I also love the opening and closing, that is just full of Easter eggs and throwbacks. I'm curious how that idea came about, putting that all together, and then having King collaborators be a lot of the actors in that scene.
Talking about the small sequence at the beginning and the ending, I was talking with Sebastian, and we were like, okay, so Sebastian Cruz, the producer, and we were like, okay, we want to do something quite special, to give the audience the feeling that they are truly entering into Stephen King universe, like when you start the film, you're like, okay, what is it? Am I in a documentary or is it a film? Where am I? To have this kind of like you entering into something completely new. So we worked a lot on that, and we shot in Maine, in Bangor, Maine. So we tried to build like Stephen King universe in one street, basically. And it was really fun to do. And we had the great chance of having amazing actors coming on the set. We've got Ed Wheeler, who plays in Finner. We had Carlos Trucken, who played in numerous Mike Flanagan's film. And we had Alexandra Paul, who was in Christine, Miko Yu, who was in Pet Sematary, Jeffrey Deman, and even in the voices, like we really wanted to have actors to make, voices as well. So on the radio, we had James Caan and Tim Curry, and at the gas station, we had G. Wallace. So yeah, we put a lot of energy into that, and we really wanted to like bring everyone into Stephen King universe, and even the ending of the sequence, which is quite funny in some way. So we thought, okay, let's do something like some kind King thing. So yeah.
I loved it. I mean, even the fact that you reminded people that The Running Man is a King adaptation. I loved to see that. So I'm curious, as much as this was, a documentary about the filmmakers behind King, I'm curious if there was ever a thought about actually having King be involved with the project to discuss his collaboration or no collaboration, such as with Kubrick, on these adaptations.
Since day one, we talk about that possibility, but it wasn't something that felt right, because it would have made a film in itself, and it wouldn't find its place with all the other directors. So it would be quite difficult, to have King in it. So we thought that perhaps we should have him in the fictional introduction, and we tried to have him in that, but we couldn't make it possible, which is a shame, because it would have been great to have him just making a cameo. We thought it would make more sense than having him talking and having the directors on the other parts. So it would be weird in some way.
Sure. No, I get it, because the documentary is about their perspective more than his. So I totally appreciate where you're coming from. Maybe then on the sequel, if you get one, you do because I would have loved to have seen him be the one that says, "I told her so." And that would have been great. Yeah, there you go. Before I let you go, I'm curious if there was any one movie that you were surprised to learn so much about through your interviews that maybe you didn't know as much about before.
I think Tom Holland's movies, actually, because it was so fascinating to hear a little bit more about the Langoliers or about Finner. And I think, I mean, I love the Langoliers. I agree that the CGI is not perfect for sure, and Tom Holland is the first one to say it as well. And it's all a matter of budget, actually. So a lot of time, I think people might be harsh on some films, because you're like, okay, but it's not the director's fault. It's because of the budget, So, but I think, the Langoliers is the one that I really enjoy. And talking about that film, I think it was great. And it's one of them that I wish we had talked more about, in the documentary, because I think there were great anecdotes about that one.
Admittedly, that's still a blind spot for me, so I might have to fill that one in this weekend. But regardless, I really cannot wait to spread the word about this movie. I mean, it is just such a beautiful love letter to all those who have brought King's works to life. And so thank you so much, Daphné, for taking the time to chat. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your week.